A couple years ago, I was at our Chinese restaurant and I opened up this fortune teller thing, and it said on there, if you're happy, you're successful. And so that has really stuck with me. I mean, I literally still have it, and that was a couple years ago. I still have it on my bathroom mirror because it was something that, like, whenever I was in high school, even in college, I was always driving and striving for success, and I didn't really know what that would look like for me. But I would say right now I'm more happy than I have ever been, more content than I've ever been. So you know what? I am successful because of that. So I guess I can speak on that. So a little bit about me is I'm from Stigler. I went to NSU after I graduated. I didn't really know what I was doing other than I was going to college for free because I was so poor, so that you get to go to college for free then. And so it was really kind of a learning curve for me because, you know, you are from a small town and then you go to college and it's kind of like not everyone cares so much. But then I found an advisor and she was like, oh, you belong here, so I started my marketing degree. At the same time that I started my marketing degree, I decided I'm going to grow some flowers. And my husband told me, which he was my boyfriend at the time, or yes, he was my boyfriend at the time. He was like, if we're going to grow flowers, we're going to grow some vegetables. And so I tilled up a little garden like 4 or 5 times. Now I encourage no-till or like low-till. But I didn't know at that time, so I was just like tilling as much as I could. But he was off working in the oil field, so I just kind of had my little, I mean, it wasn't any size, but I started growing, and thinking back, it's really like, I knew right then it was life-changing, and then looking back, it's like, wow, it really like completely altered the path of my life, because that was when I really started to like slow down and get closer to God, and then also realize that like just putting my hands in the soil is life-changing because it's just, you realize what's actually important, just like the small things, the simple life, being content and not always striving for more. So did that, and also me and my husband, we never had we didn't grow up on a farm. Nothing was really like, knowledge was not handed down to us. Land was not handed down to us. We really had no idea what we were doing. And as I got on YouTube, I realized, wow, there's actually a movement going on. There's a lot of people that have no idea what they're doing, but they want to start doing it. So I got on YouTube and I really kind of started teaching myself at that point how to garden. And I watched Jessica Sowards from Roots and Refuge, and she was someone that I really clung to and was like, wow, I was motivated big time by her. And she mentioned a book that she had read, and it was called Animal Vegetable Miracle. And this book basically follows a family for a year as they source every bit of their food locally. I think at the beginning it gives them each like a little cheat, but they don't even do it very often. It's like one little thing. But I mean, from making mayonnaise to everything they did was sourced locally. And it was really cool to me because I was already definitely in the hippie aspect of life. I like to recycle. I was already I was just definitely labeled as hippie. And so whenever I read this, and I was like, oh my gosh, it matters when you make your own mayonnaise, because then you don't have to have, this store source the eggs, source the oil, and then they have to not only make it in this facility and put all this crap in it to make it preserved, but then they have to send it out, and then you have to go to the store, and then you have to take it home, and then you probably leave this much in the bottom of it because you don't care because you didn't make it. And so even the simple thing as making your own condiments and things like that, I was like, wow, this actually matters. The little things actually matter. And so the reason I bring up the Animal Vegetable Miracle is because fast forward, COVID happened, and it was not just something that I was obsessed with. Other people started becoming obsessed with the food system being broken, and it kind of being it was no longer just this weird niche. It was the topic of conversation. And so I was like, wow, I actually think I am going to change the world, because I will say, when I was in college or even in high school, actually growing up in general, I always said, when people asked me what I was going to do, I was bold enough to always say I'm going to change the world because I had watched a Steve Jobs movie, and at the end he gives his quote, and it always stuck with me. Those who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones that do. And so I was like, I'm going to keep with that because I feel like I am pretty confident in stating that. So I was like, I'm going to do this. So Animal Vegetable Miracle, and then COVID, I was like, wow, like God is really leading me right now. I mean, I've followed these little paths, and maybe they didn't seem like much at the time, but me just growing that little vegetable garden and my husband telling me, you know, forget about the flowers because all my flowers died, that all mattered. And so here we are, Animal Vegetable Miracle, where it's like 2023 and we're raising our own pigs at this time. We went with pigs because, first of all, we don't have goats because we had goats. I heard that joke and I will stick with that. But so we did pigs because, back to me being a hippie thing, I really enjoyed knowing, I wanted to give animals the life that they lived naturally. People are raising cows everywhere here and they're on grass and it's fine and whatever. But when you see people raising pigs, they're in like enclosed spaces on concrete. They're putting rings in their noses so they don't root. I mean, I understand that some people are doing it for different reasons, but for me, it was like such a disconnect from what they actually should be raised in. And so I really started getting into pigs and heritage hogs and things like that. So 2023, we were raising our own pigs. We had really only sold them to like we really give it away to our family, but we weren't really selling it. We were just having our own little small garden, and that book had really stuck with me. I still don't even think I've actually finished the whole thing. I've just read it 65 times from like the beginning to almost the end, but I do that with a lot of things. But anyway, it kind of just stuck with me because I think I started listening it to on Audible again. And so I was like, you know, the options for us here, we're actually very blessed around here to be able to have farmers locally that we can source from. So, you know, but still our options were limited. It would be super hard for me to try to source everything in a year locally. So, but our options were either buying half or whole hog or beef. There wasn't really hogs that I knew of at the time. And then you would get lucky if Kay's Produce was open or if the random person off the street was set up in a parking lot. There was no structure and I wanted more. So 2023, I was after COVID, and so people were like really wanting that. So we went in and was like, okay, it's time to start a farmer's market. And so I had actually been following Muskogee Farmers Market. I knew that Wilburton had their own farmer's market. And so I was like, I don't know why Stigler couldn't have one, which looking back, I realized that they had actually tried a few times, which was kind of crazy to me because I was interested in it and I still never knew about it. So it just wasn't getting out to the right people. But because of that, there was a bunch of naysayers saying, well, we've tried it. It's probably not going to work. We tried it. And then a lot of people that would want to give you advice, well, it's hard work, blah, blah, blah. And it's definitely been hard work, but I will say last year when we started, I was so on fire, I didn't really care how much hard work it was, and I actually did not follow any rules either. I even lied a few times to get what I wanted. So, like, for example, thank you to our city manager who let me shut down Broadway, but I told him that, yes, we have 20 vendors, we can fill the street before I even had like 5. So, but I knew I wanted it right there because people being able to see it was a huge deal. I mean, it needed to be, I just had this whole vision, and so we fibbed a few times. But by the first day, I come around that corner, and I just remember seeing people already setting up tents, helping each other, and I just started bawling, and I was not pregnant at that time. So, I mean, but it really was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to work. Like, I had people that believed in me, but not necessarily believed in what I was doing, and which is fine. I mean, I believed in it enough for the whole county. So, I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but it was like, oh my gosh, it is going to work. It is going to work. And so not only if you're familiar with the town and you're here, so you probably have heard of the farmers market, it started having like a ripple effect, and there was other markets that started popping up around us, and they would ask me for advice, and I was like, okay, fantastic. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I can tell you, how to, I've always said fake it till you make it. And I don't know if that's the best advice but it's gotten me here. So, it hasn't failed me yet. But I will say, turning that corner and seeing that there was an interest here. And one thing about Stigler, if you're familiar with here, that they are some of the most shop local people there is. I mean, that was instilled in me whenever I was young. You shop local, but in my head it was always material items. It wasn't like sourced from a farmer that you know. Which that was just my misconception, I'm sure. But so when I started like doing the whole farming thing, it was like, oh my gosh, like there's a whole nother like world and aspect to shopping locally. Like we eat 3 times a day. Like we don't have to just source our clothes from like a boutique in town. We can source our food that we eat 3 times a day from someone we know, and not only someone we know, but the alternative is not the best option. I mean, it's just simply not. And so anyway, I realized that when I turned that corner, I was like, oh my gosh, my family can start our dreams now. And so it was more than just like doing the farmer's market, even though that was a huge success. It was like, wow, we can do what we want to now. So I don't know if some of you guys might have been in the last session, but the USDA used our new property like as an example. And so some things that we want to do. And I just want to reiterate, I did not get land handed down to me. I didn't have any previous knowledge. So like you can come from absolutely nothing and not know what you're doing and really get there, because there's so many resources out there. And I guess that's probably my point of this whole story, is really just using the resources that are out there to us, because the thing is they're out there, and the people who are not using them are just going, not necessarily to fall behind, but like they're there for us to use. So always ask questions, always use those. But we just really believe in being able to know what you're eating. I mean, it's come full circle for me. My hippie is full-fledged these days. But I guess, I mean, I already talked about why pigs. Everything that I'm doing is because we wanted access to more for ourselves. And it's really cool because as I'm wanting this for myself, there's a movement going on, and there's other people that are wanting more. So I really just feel like we're all being led back to the garden. And really, I just got up here to ramble and tell you about why I'm so passionate. So I think that should be all. Yes.